singing, dude.
Rejoices, open the gates before him, lift up your voices. Who is this King of glory? How shall we call him? He is Emmanuel, the promised of ages. The King of glory comes, the nation rejoices. Open the gates before him, lift up your voices. In all of Galilee, in city or village, he goes among his people curing their illness. The King of glory comes, the nation rejoices. Open the gates before him, lift up your voices. Sing then of David's son, our Savior and brother. In all of Galilee 'twas never another. The King of glory comes, the nation rejoices. Open the gates before him, lift up your voices. He gave his life for us, the pledge of salvation. He took upon himself the sins of the nations. The King of glory comes, the nation rejoices. Open the gates before him, lift up your voices. He conquered sin and death, he truly has risen, and he will share with us his heavenly vision. The King of glory comes, the nation rejoices. Open the gates before him, lift up your voices. Harmonics night, I guess. Love harmonics. Anybody play the harmonics? You can use one of those. Toots Thielman. Great name. Praise him, praise him, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, for he is good. Praise him, praise him, praise the Lord. Praise his wondrous love. Praise him. his name, for his name is good. Yeshua HaMashiach is the name I love. Bless his name, for his name is good. He sanctified us by his blood. Ooh, now we drink from his wine of joy, filled with the spirit of Adonai, united in the love that Messiah brings. Now we sing to Elohim. Baruch Hashem, HaMashiach, Yeshua, Baruch Hashem, Adonai, Baruch Hashem, HaMashiach, Yeshua, Baruch Hashem, Adonai, Baruch Hashem, Adonai. Yeshua, 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 can I tell you how I feel? You have given me your spirit. I love you so. Peace, 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 peace. The gospel in a word is peace. Peace that passes all understanding. Peace, peace, peace. Love, 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 love. The gospel in a word is love. Love your neighbor as your brother. Love, love, love. Joy, 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 joy. The gospel in a word is joy. Joy that flows from deep within you. Joy, joy, joy. Yeshua, 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 can I tell you how I feel? You have given me your spirit. I love you so. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Good evening.
Evening.
I got the feeling that everyone is very quiet. I didn't want to wake you up or anything. Hi, good evening. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
How are things?
Good.
Okay. Well, you're here.
Yeah.
You're here. And, I forget who it was that said that, showing up,
80%.
is it 80? 80%?
It's gone up.
10 more percent if you're dressed appropriately for where you are. Because, you could show up somewhere and you don't have the right outfit on, and then everyone's going. At least that's the, if you're gonna monetize everything, or you're gonna make sure that it's all can be put on a graph, it'd be great. All right, we have many pieces of paper in for your reading enjoyment today. I'm only going to point a couple things out for you. First of all, Sunday, beautiful Niagara Dark Strip, as I used to hear in my childhood. It's work day here at our favorite fixer-upper. Okay, I don't even know if you know this, and I cannot remember for the life of me. I do know how old the synagogue is. I mean, how long we've been in existence, but I don't remember how long we've been in this building. Anybody?
93.
90, see, she knows. 93. I was just a teenager then. I don't remember anything. So in 93, when we bought this building, it had been abandoned. In other words, the pews you're sitting in and a lot of the chairs that you sit in the other rooms, these things were left here. And that church just left town and they didn't pay their bills. So we inherited, we got a really good deal. And guess what? Work, work, work. Patch, patch, patch. Patch, patch, patch. And you know, you may have a fixer-upper house. Some people, you know, they like to buy them and flip them. I never heard of them doing it into like a church building or synagogue. Have you ever heard of that? Maybe they can start a show or something about flipping those, but we could have used somebody to flip this and make it better. So it's patch, patch, patch. And so it's a good time of year to have work day, especially if you're gonna work outside, right? You don't want it to be 105 when you're trying to work outside. And that's at the bottom here. If you have any questions, you can ask Jenny. I think her parents know stuff and Jenny knows stuff. Somebody will help you out. They're going to provide hot dogs and hamburgers to be grilled outside, but if you want to bring a dish to pass, feel free. No big whoop. It's no big whoop. Just saying, do not bring extravaganza casseroles. It's work day. It's no big whoop, okay? Don't forget, our fairly new doors. The doors are only like 18 months old. But anyways, some people, not you of course, you're adorable, but they leave and then the door like clanks behind them, but it's not locked. And so we want to make sure that when anybody leaves through that door after 9 o'clock, when you leave through the door, you follow the directions, you make sure that is locked behind you. And it has a different sound. You don't even have to go back and inspect it because you'll hear a locking sound rather than clunk. Clunk means it's not locked. Means it's locked. There's instructions here. Okay, next weekend, I'm very busy. And I hope you will be busy joining me because next week is the Hebrew Blast-Off. If you still want to take it, if you haven't been decided or you decided you do, make sure you sign up in the next couple of days because we have to get books printed. So if you sign up later, there may or may not be a book available for you. And so the instructions are here. If you need any other information, please ask me. I really won't make fun of you and laugh at how silly your question is. I really will try to answer your questions. And it is only for adults, or you have to be a teenager to come. I have to, because we might have teenagers coming, just so I warn you all. But I think that they will not bother the class like maybe a 3-year-old. That would bother the class, but teenagers, not so much. But it is a fun time. It is not horrible. It's actually, I try to make it enjoyable. And you do learn quite a bit that you would never get other ways. In general, the way, if you are not taught Hebrew as a child in your Shabbat school classes, and you take Hebrew as an adult, here's what they do. Okay, today we're going to do 3 letters. And then if you're lucky, you can come back in a couple days. But it could be a week. And so the next time you show up, you get 3 more letters. Meanwhile, you already forgot the first 3. And so the teacher has a tremendous problem trying to get you up to speed. Trying to get you up to speed to have seen and remember all the letters. We're going to basically get way ahead of that process in 2 days. Okay, in 2 days. And that means, by the way, if you can successfully complete the Hebrew Blast-Off both days, at the end we will discuss when and if you want to have classes, like on a weekly basis. So just be ready to do that. There's no pressure on you, you don't have to, but if you would like to continue, then that's when we'll discuss when those classes, or if those classes will be. Fair enough? Okay, hope to see you next. It'll be next Saturday morning, or sorry, afternoon. I can't think today. When did we say? Oh, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, other information is here. You should look at the book table in the Oneg room or the grand ballroom, much classier. And there's other announcements on here. And so, I still like winter in Florida. I don't know about you. Tuesday, I was warm all day and I was sweaty all day. I went, it's February and I would like it to be nice and cool. John and I visited one of his friends from college, came down for a few days, and so we had dinner with her on Clearwater Beach Wednesday night. And all the people at Clearwater Beach who all paid like $300-400 a night for their room, they were freezing. And all the people there from, I don't know, Michigan and Canada were wearing shorts, and some of them had jackets on. So that was interesting. Meanwhile, we're all going, and our friend Nancy goes, yeah, it's cold here. She's from Denver. She said, I brought my coat because it was 6 degrees out when we came in. Yeah, you probably didn't realize it was going to be this cold. But it's not going to be icy, and it's not going to be snowy, so it's not so bad. Anyway, we live in a great place, not just in our country, but in a nation. It has pluses and minuses. Just like we attend a great synagogue, it has pluses and minuses, like any human institution. But it is an opportunity we hope that you feel comfortable in. We hope that you feel like you can communicate with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We hope that you do feel welcome and ready to worship, because all over the world, starting tonight, Jewish people are coming for Shabbat services and worshiping the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And so it's a great privilege for us to join them, the millions of Jews around the world, and say, together with them, we also want to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Thanks for coming. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
As we let's try that again. As we begin our services this evening, we start with Vesham Ru, pages 8 to 11, as Jenny leads, and we respond on those pages. It's a reminder that, Vesham Ru is actually an instruction that reminds us of the privilege and honor we have of celebrating Shabbat, because it's truly special, and it is God's indicator to us as every week rolls around that He is our God, and we are His people. Pages 8 to 11.
Shabbat, Dorotam Barid Olam, Beini Ubein Bnei Yisrael, Oti Leolam, Ki Sheshet Yamim Hasa Adonai, Et HaShamayim V'et HaHaretz. Uvayom hashvi, uvayom hashvi, Shabbat vayinafash. Together, the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever, that in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th day He ceased from work and rested.
And so we kindle the Shabbat lights, remembering what we have just reminded ourselves of, and anticipating the time when there will be a time of eternal Shabbat, when the world will be lit up like never before.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kichanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by your commandments, and commanded us to light the candles for the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kichanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'hiyot Elohim, v'natan lanu Yeshua Meshikeinu ha'or la'olam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us by your commandments, and commanded us to be a light for the nations, and gave us Yeshua, our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Yes, he's the light of the world, but he's also the producer of eternal Shabbat and the protector of the Shabbat guarantees for us until that time comes. And so we respond to that reality on pages 40 and 41 with Elohim Asher.
Elohim Asher Diber Mikadem Hamim Rabot Ubirachim Rabot El Havot Beyad HaNevi'im Diber Aleinu Be'achari Hayamim Ha'ele Beyad HaBein Asher Sam Leo Reish Kol U'Yado Gamasa Et HaOlamim U'Zohar Kevodo B'Tselem Atzmuto Ve'Nosei Kol Bivaro Rav HaGvura Ulachar She'asa Tihur Chataim Yashav Merim Adullah. In the past, God spoke to our fathers through the prophets at many times in various ways. But now, at the end of the days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory, and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonement for sin, he sat down in the place of authority, beside the majesty in heaven. True and firm, established and lasting, bright and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
As we just responded, he sat down in the place of authority beside the majesty in heaven. And that's the scene we now pick up on as we respond with the Tehillat Habrit Chadashah portion, which picks up on the closing paragraph as we continue to praise our God, and we find seated at the hand of the Almighty, the majesty in heaven, is the Lamb, the conquering hero. Tehillat Habrit Chadashah is page 138 and 139. It's the top of those pages. And as we have become accustomed to do, I'll lead you in those parts that do not have quotation marks, and you get the parts that do have quotation marks. And if you haven't figured out what those are, look to your neighbor, and hopefully he or she does know what they are. The text begins, V'kol gadol lemor ha-yeshua le'Elohinu ha-yoshev al ha-kisei v'laseh. And they cried out in a loud voice,
Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, to receive power and wealth, and wisdom and strength, and honor and glory and praise.
Then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth, under the earth and on the sea, and all that is in them, singing,
To him who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb, be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever. Amen. Praise and glory and wisdom and thanks and honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever.
Amen.
seated on the throne, awaiting his return. And we anticipate that return as we join in pages 156 and 157 for Sephardi Kaddish, because it's from that throne that he will, and we anticipate he will come, and we anticipate that time. If you are remembering lost loved ones, whether family or friends at this particular time, it is traditional to stand as we reflect on those that we have lost in years gone by at this time of year. So if that's your case, I invite you to stand with us. Pages 156 and 157.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, לעלמא דברה חירותי, וימלך מלכותי ויצמח פורחני ויקרב משיחי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בישראל, בעגל ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מדורה, לעולם עולמי עולמיה יתברך. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם עולמי עולמיה יתברך. וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודש הבריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה, וישרתה תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים טובים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרמיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen. Glorified and sanctified be his great name in the world, which is created according to his will. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom, and cause his salvation to sprout, and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days, and in the life of all the house of Israel, speedily, yes, soon. And let us say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and forever eternally. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he, who is high above, far above all blessings and hymns, and praises and consolations which are spoken in the world, and say, Amen. May there be great peace from heaven, and good life for us, and for all Israel. And let us say, Amen. He who makes peace in the heavenly realms, may he make peace for us, and for all Israel. And let us say, Amen.
Will the rest of you now please join us as we turn and face Jerusalem, the direction of the ark. Our Amida portions this evening are paragraphs 1 through 3, pages 66 to 71. It's a reminder that God will in fact send that very Redeemer whom we have anticipated through Sephardi Kaddish. Utilize these words now to shape your response. You, O most high God, will in love bring a Redeemer to their children for the sake of your name, which is why we sanctify that name, your name, in the world, as they sanctify it in the highest heavens. As it is written by your prophet, they call out to each other, and they say,
Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. All the earth is full of his splendor. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot melech kol haaretz kevodo.
Then across from them comes back this resounding response.
Praise, praise be the splendor of the Lord everywhere it is manifested. Baruch kavod Adonai, mim kamo.
And then in the holy writings we are told,
The Lord shall reign forever, your God, O Zion, for all generations. Baruch Adonai leolam, Elohai Zion lador vador. Hallelujah.
so in every generation we too will tell of your greatness. In every age we will proclaim your holiness. Your praise will certainly never depart from our lips, for you are great and holy God and King. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Blessed are you, O Lord, you are the holy God. You may be seated. We turn now to pages 42 to 45 for Ashraish. It's the blessing that's described of those who serve this most awesome one, whom we have responded to. We begin midway through the page, middle of the page 42 and 43. Jenny will start you with the Hebrew, and you will join her in the English, and then you and I will then responsibly move through the rest of this until the second singing of Mikamoka.
Ashrei ish yishama lemitzvotecha v'toratecha udevaracha yasim al libo. Together, happy is the man who heeds your commandments, your Torah, and who places your word upon his heart. It is true that you are the Lord of your people and the mighty King to plead their case. It is true you are the first and the last, and besides you we have no King, Redeemer, and Savior.
For the beginning times and for the later times, your word is good, and it endures forever and ever. Your word is true and faithful. It is a statute which shall not pass away. It is true that you are He. You are the Lord our God and God of our ancestors, our King and King of our ancestors, our Redeemer and Redeemer of our ancestors, our Maker, the rock of our salvation, our Deliverer and our Rescuer from everlasting. All this is your name. There is no God besides you.
From Egypt you redeemed us, O Lord our God, and from the house of slavery you delivered us. All their firstborn you slayed, and your firstborn you redeemed. And the sea of reeds you divided and drowned the proud. But the beloved ones you caused to pass through, while the waters covered their adversaries. One from another did not remain.
Therefore the beloved praised and they extolled God. The beloved ones gave hymns, songs, praises, blessings, and thanks to the King, the God who lives and who endures.
You are high and wonderful, great and feared, who brings low the proud and raises the humble, who brings forth the prisoners and delivers the meek, and helps the poor and answers his people in the time when they cry to him.
The song which we will sing in a moment begins, I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and rider he is hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will honor him. My ancestors' God, and I will exalt him, which is why we respond, praise our exalted God. Blessed is he who is to be blessed. Moses and the people of Israel sang that song to you with great joy, and we join them now, as they all said, and we all say,
Who is like you, O Lord among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tahilot oseh fedei. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora
question that begs an answer. The answer that begs for is found on pages 88 and 89. By even so. Please rise, once again facing Jerusalem as we respond. Pardon me, not with Vine even so. Back it up. Ein Kamoka is the answer to me Kamoka. By even so is an answer to another question. Ein Kamoka, pages 88 and 89.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, v'ein k'maasecha, malchutcha malchut kol amim, u'memshaltcha b'kol dor, mekol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imolach le'olam va'ed, Adonai hoz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Together, there is none like you among the gods, my Lord, and there is nothing that compares to your deeds. Your kingdom is a kingdom that endures for all eternity, and your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. The Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, the Lord shall reign throughout eternity. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
And the Lord should reign through each and every one of our lives, and that is what we acknowledge now as we turn to pages 34 to 39 and respond to the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kevod Malakuto, Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, B'kol levacha u'b'kol nafshecha u'b'kol me'odecha. Ve'hayu ha'dvarim ha'eleh asher anochi tzavta hayom alevavecha. Ve'shinantam levanecha, ve'dibarta bam, ve'shivtecha bebeitecha, u'v'lechtecha b'derech, u'shachtecha u'komecha, u'shartam leot al yadecha, ve'hayu letotefot b'einecha, u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Blessed be he whose glorious kingdom is eternal. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your life, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands and write them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates.
The reality that we now have affirmed will in fact be affirmed around the world, as By Even So reminds us back on pages 88 and 89. It's the time when the Torah will go forth from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, as it now goes forth among us as well.
Vayahi ben Zor Haron, Vayomer Moshe, Kum Adonai vayafut Zor Hovacha, Vayanusu mizanecha mipanecha. Ki mitzion tetzaveh
Aton Tetzaveh Torah Udavar Adonai Mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael
And it came to pass, whenever the ark went forward, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you.
For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem.
Blessed be
He who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel. And now the people who receive the Torah respond on page 133.
The ark now unveils its treasure.
To our eyes and minds and hearts.
Inside, the scroll of Torah stands.
It stands there with all its richness and wisdom.
As we listen, voices speak, voices of our ancestors.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, and Moses.
O God, they bring us your instructions for us.
Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam speak to us as well.
O God, they move us to respond to your promises to us.
We are grateful for your words, the words of Torah.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord calls.
We will hear your words that we may learn them, love them, live them.
What does the Lord require of you? To fear him, love him, serve him, and walk in all his ways.
All the Lord has said, we will do.
Misha Barak Abatenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Rabbi John. May he bless Matthew. May he bless Virginia. And may he bless Carrie, who have come up to honor God and the Torah. May the Holy One bless them and their families, and send blessing and prosperity on all the work of their hands. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Bless the Lord who is blessed. Bless the Lord who is blessed forever and ever. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us the Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
V'ta tetzaveh et b'nei Yisrael v'yichu elecha shem zayit zach katit lama or le'alot ner tamin be'ohel moed mechutz laparochet asher al ha'idud ya'arok oto Aharon uvanav me'erev od boker Lifnei Adonai. You may be seated. And these, and you are to charge or instruct the children of Israel that they are to take up for you olive oil, a pure, beaten. It's for the light, in order to light that light permanently, ongoingly, continually, however you want to say that. It's that which is found in the tent of meeting, and it's found outside the veil, which is before the testimony, actually the Ark of the Testimony. And Aaron and his sons are to arrange it or to keep it lit so that it's lit from evening until morning, as it stands literally before the face of the Lord, in the presence of the Lord. Very interesting text, which gets reinforced a little bit later in the reading you'll hear momentarily. God says, it's from here that I will speak to the people. Here I will meet with you and give the people my words. Very powerful text. And one we need to remind ourselves of, because the words that were given there are the words that endure and should impact our lives. And they are words which were read to you tonight, and you do not know if they were read correctly, but you will know better after you take the blast off next week, because you'll be able to follow along. The reading is there for you in the bulletin in case you missed it.
Shalom. I'll be reading from the Torah, the book of Shemot, Exodus, chapter 25, verses 1 through 2, and verse 8. Beginning with verse 1.
That was last week's. Marsha. Oh, it's the right reading. It's just not the right order.
Okay, Exodus 29, 42, 46. Through all your generations, this is to be the regular burnt offering at the entrance to the tent of meeting before Adonai. There is where I will meet with you to speak with you. There I will meet with the people of Israel, and the place will be consecrated to my glory. I will consecrate the tent of meeting and the altar. Likewise, I will consecrate Aaron and his sons to serve me in the office of Cohen. Then I will live with the people of Israel and be their God. They will know that I am Adonai, their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt in order to live with them. I am Adonai, their God.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting, planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
He is the one who gave to us the Torah. Originally it came from Mount Sinai. It continued to be spoken, as you heard in the text tonight, from within the Holy of Holies. But now we acknowledge the original receipt of those original words, the first part of that, as we stand as our ancestors did, and we acknowledge that these are the words of God given to us directly by him through the hand of Moses. The Zohar Torah is that response. You find that on pages 98 and 99. If you need the transliteration, that's page 95.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד Moshe. This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's commands by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated. And now, to clarify the confusion, the scripture reading from tonight happens to come from the Torah, happens to be last week's Parsha, but it's still the scripture reading for tonight.
I'll be reading from Shemot, book of Exodus, chapter 25, verses 1 through 2, and verse 8. Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel to take up a collection for me, accept a contribution from anyone who wholeheartedly wants to give. They are to make me a sanctuary so that I may live among them."
When God speaks, we need to respond. Our response is found on pages 96 and 97. It's Chaim. The words that God gives are to be a tree of life, impacting our lives as it drives its roots deep into the soil of our lives. And so we respond, renew our days. Pages 96 and 97.
Etzraim hi l'machazikim ba leton kleha lelusha derakeha darkei noam ve'kol tivoteiha Ashirenu Adonai Elecha Ve'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu Kidem Ashirenu Adonai Elecha Ve'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu A tree of life it is to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who support it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths of peace. Turn us, Lord, to you, and let us return. Renew our days as of old.
With our lives, our days renewed as of old, and having fully turned to our God, we now respond as the priests of old did. Uvnu Kol Yomar is that response as we stand yet again before him as his priests. Pages 98 and 99 shapes our response.
Uvnu Kol Yomar Shuva Adonai Rivavot Alfei Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, "Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who experience your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay the return of your Messiah. Ba'avor David Avdecha, al teshev penei mishachecha. Ki lakach tov natati lachem, Torati al ta'azovu. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah."
And while we greet each other up here, please feel free to greet each other down there, but you don't have to go all the way around the synagogue to do so. pretty well. Don't have to yell at anyone to sit down.
And Shabbat school is excused if they've not already excused themselves.
If you've taken a look at the order of service at the bulletin and have gotten so far as to have taken a look at the title of the drash, some of you might be, in fact, should be saying, now that's some drash title you've got going there. It sort of makes you wonder about the source and or inspiration for the drash itself. It might also make you just a little suspicious about the state of the person delivering said drash. Moreover, to be completely transparent with you, I am going to start with a political reference. Okay, now, that title may just be hitting too close to home with respect to the actual state of the speaker, you might be saying. So, maybe it's time just to head for the door. Well, don't get anxious, at least not yet. So let me begin as promised. Imagine that you're in the middle of this year's quickly approaching presidential primary season. And if you didn't know it was quickly approaching, it's quickly approaching. In the middle of that, one candidate proposes, as you imagine this, a vast program to rebuild America's entire transportation infrastructure. Roads and bridges, highways and interstates, railroads and harbors. It's a program that sounds perhaps even grander than NASA's historic effort to land a man on the moon. And then, when a challenger asks said candidate just how we're going to pay for this very massive undertaking, he or she says, very quickly, well, we'll just take an offering. Now, normally said candidate would be laughed off the stage, but this is exactly what is proposed for the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, in last week's portion or parsha. As we were reminded, the Mishkan is the portable home of the Lord himself, as he quite literally, and by the way, when I say quite literally, I literally mean quite literally, when he quite literally accompanies his people in their journey toward the land that was promised them. Now, the account of its elaborate construction, as we reflected on it last week, dominates the entire second half of the book of Exodus, 16 chapters worth, in fact. Furthermore, this construction process is the culmination of the departure from Egypt, and we know that because the book itself culminates with the finishing of the structure. The closing part of the parsha, Exodus 40, verses 34 to the end. So the driving reason then, the text lets us know, that the Lord liberated Israel from Egypt was for them to serve him, and this is the place where that service happens, and from which, as the text tells us, he guides his people on their journey. It's all the more remarkable then, let me suggest, that this vast project is to be supplied and funded totally by voluntary offerings. As he begins his instructions for the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the Lord tells Moses in the text that was read to you, the scripture text, "Speak to the children of Israel and let them raise up for me an offering. From every person whose heart moves them, you shall raise up my offering." Now, this radical approach provides a sharp contrast with the week's Haftarah reading, last week's reading. That's where Solomon set out to build the temple, the successor to the Mishkan. And the text says there, 1 Kings 5, he imposed forced laborers from all Israel. The levy was 30,000 men. So, conscription, taxes, and levies. That's how public works get done. So then why here does Moses depend on what has often been called a free will offering, or what we would describe as voluntary giving? This question should become even starker in light of the common rabbinic understanding that usually intentional obedience is to be considered in some ways better than spontaneous response. And in this view, then, it's better to do a deed in obedience to a regulation than do it just because you want to. Because in that way, it involves greater commitment, and conviction. So intentional obedience to a guideline involves a degree of understanding and self-discipline that spontaneous action does not. It also, at least ideally, involves the same level of what we might call heart motivation. The same level of heart motivation that spontaneous action does. Therefore, as the rabbis understand it, obedience involves more of the whole person in God's service. You, in fact, reflected on it. Second verse of the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your life, with all your strength. Given that understanding, then, why then is the gathering of materials for the Mishkan left entirely up to voluntary action? Well, suggestion number one is that the Torah is teaching us an essential truth about serving the God of Israel. And by the way, let me remind you that service in Hebrew is avodah, and avodah is the same word we use for worship. The two are linked. And so, not part of this story, so I'll step out of the story for a minute. If worship is work for you, that's a good thing. Because work is translated avodah in Hebrew, and avodah means worship. That's also why we call this a service. Did ever? Okay, got that part of the story? Then we can get back to ours. Okay, where were we? We were avodah. The Torah is teaching an essential truth about serving the God of Israel. Now, before our liberation, as the end of the second paragraph in the first chapter of Exodus tells us, verses 13 and 14, before our liberation, it says, the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with crushing hardness. They embittered their lives with hard servitude in mortar and in brick and in every servitude in the field. All their servitude in which they made them serve was with crushing hardness. So reads the text. Now, in these two verses, the root avad, service, labor, servitude, it appears 5 times in those two verses, and it clearly refers to compulsory service. In other words, slavery. When we retell the story, the Passover story at the Seder, as we will in a couple months, we lift up our cups and we recite, He brought us out from servitude to freedom. So Passover is rightly called the season of our freedom. The Torah, however, speaks not so much of freedom as of a change of servitude. We were serving Pharaoh, but the Lord commanded Pharaoh, let my people go, that they may serve me. Or if you want to rephrase it, it's the first verse of chapter 8. So that they will no longer serve you, but will serve me instead. In their servitude to Pharaoh, the Israelites were compelled to build those great storehouse cities of Egypt. However, in their service to the Lord, they willingly build the Mishkan. The opposite of compulsory servitude, then, is not freedom to do whatever, but it is willing service. Freedom, our ancient story tells us, is not a matter of total autonomy, nor is it the absence of any authority over our lives. Rather, real freedom is service to the one true God, the one who is worthy to be served. And we enter this freedom, we enter it by serving willingly, as the ancient Israelis did, when each one contributed to the offering voluntarily, as their hearts moved them. As the text from last week tells us, Yidvenu libo, wholeheartedly, as our translation had it. Now, the Hebrew there is instructive. The root of the verb, yidvenu, or moved, is nadav, which is also the root for the noun noble, or prince. The connection is reasonably clear. And noble is one who is free to act as they are moved, and not under compulsion. They are not even subject to forced labor and oppression. But neither does a noble live only for themselves. Rather, the noble serves freely offering their resources and their own self, in fact, to the cause and service of a worthy master, a great and noble, a king. Now, that text should sound familiar, or that concept should sound familiar. Perhaps even somewhat rabbinic, one might say. So compare that understanding then to the following text. The rabbi writes, therefore, do not let sin, that's the way it's usually translated, do not let the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, reign in your mortal body, so that you obey its evil desires. Do not offer, therefore, the parts of your body to the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, as instruments of wickedness, but rather offer yourselves to God, there it is, as those who have returned from death to life, and offer the parts of your body as instruments, as vehicles, tools of righteousness. For the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, shall not be your master, here you go, because though you used to be slaves to the Yetzer Hara, you wholeheartedly obeyed the form of teaching. Well, that sort of sounds like obeying Torah, doesn't it? Teaching Torah. Okay, anyhow, back to the text. Because you wholeheartedly obeyed the form of teaching to which you were committed. You have been set free from the Yetzer Hara, and that means you have become slaves to righteousness. In case you don't remember where that's from, that's Romans 6. It's typically rabbinic, perhaps even a bit paradoxical, but by now we've probably gotten somewhat accustomed to this way of thought. So, a man left his 3 sons 17 camels as their inheritance. To the first son, he left half the camels. To the second son, he left 1/3 of the camels. And to the youngest son, he left 1/9 of the camels. Well, the 3 sons got into a negotiation. 17 does not divide by 2. I understand it's the end of the week. It's Friday night. We're almost moving to the weekend. Sorry to throw this math at you, but you do understand 17. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure you're with me. All right. So 17 doesn't divide by 2. It doesn't divide by 3. It doesn't divide by 9. Now, after a while, the brotherly tempers started to get quite strained. And then finally, in desperation, one of them had a bright idea, and they consulted a reputedly wise old rabbi. No, it was not me, because it's an old rabbi. I was only 6 years old when we moved into this building. Well, the rabbi thought about their problem for a long time. And finally, he came back and said, well, just maybe I can help you if you want. You can have one of my camels on loan. So now they had 18 camels. Well, the first son took his half. Half of 18 is 9. The second son took his third. 1/3 of 18 is 6. The youngest son then took his 9th. 1/9 of 18 is 2. 9 plus 6 plus 2. Well, that makes 17 camels. And they had 1 camel left over. So they gave it back to the rabbi. Welcome to rabbinic thought, and also to Jewish math. But back to our story.
That was good.
In most of the guidelines, including that you find in the Torah, including those for the offerings, the Torah gives rather specific requirements. However, in this vital offering that we're talking about, the offering for the home for God, it is totally voluntary giving that prevails. So we see that service to the Lord is never oppressive or degrading, as is service to Pharaoh. But instead, it's ennobling, it's elevating. And Yeshua built on this truth when he stated, take my yoke on you and learn from me, for my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Now, people usually say a yoke is an instrument of bondage imposed on a beast or on a human against their will. But Yeshua calls us to take on the yoke of service voluntarily. Such a yoke he calls, or he terms, my yoke. My yoke. One more time. My yoke. It's a yoke that unites us with him. A yoke unites two animals or creatures. So it unites us to him. Now, we will, he says, discover that it is not oppressive, but in fact easy. By the way, a note on yoke. It almost sounds poetic. Most people who've never seen how this thing works, a yoke makes the work easier for the animals, not harder for the animals. It makes the burden lighter in and of itself. All right. Therefore, freely yielding oneself to God is elevating. Serving God instead of ourselves is freeing. And the very name of the parsha from last week, Truma, points to this very same truth. Now, Truma refers to the offering itself. As the text says, speak to the children of Israel and let them raise up for me an offering. The root here is rum, to be high, elevated, to rise up. Did you catch that? To be high. Thank you for catching up with me. The offering is raised up to God, but it also raises up the offerer. You see, service to God is in fact, the God of Israel, is in fact elevating. Notably, the account of the building of the temple in 1 Kings, a passage I referenced earlier, in that text the word truma is absent. Solomon imposes forced labor. And it looks like an efficient operation, the sort of thing that governments love to do. So there's no need for an offering, and therefore no opportunity to be elevated by the offering, to get raised up because of our response, or to put it in the words of the Drash, to get high. A final lesson. Moses' instructions that every person whose heart moves them, that focuses on the individual, as does Yeshua's invitation to take on his yoke. But the scripture doesn't stop at this kind of individual response to God. Yeshua's invitation to take on his yoke is, as he says, to all who labor and are heavily burdened. The Mishkan, as we're told, the tabernacle, is built through the efforts of all. The combined response of crowds of people with willing hearts. And guess what? They more than meet the need. And so the text says, not in next week's portion, but the week after's portion, chapter 36, and they spoke to Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work, which the Lord commanded us to make. And so Moses gave command, and they announced it throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing. That should be a wow. Yeah. The people have to be restrained from bringing. For the materials they had were sufficient for all the work to make it, and in fact they were too much. So reads the text. Similarly, we gain personal freedom as we voluntarily serve God. This is the offering that elevates, that gets us high. And so it's not the individual alone, but a service that's shared with all those whose hearts move them to give. And this is the way God encourages us to respond to him. And within the text from last week as well is the further encouragement. Because right from the heart of the Mishkan that we've gathered the materials for, that these people brought the offerings for, in last week's Parsha we read, for the heart of that Mishkan, often called the most holy place, you shall make 2 golden cherubim. The cherubim shall have their wings spread upwards with their faces toward one another, and I will speak with you from between the 2 cherubim that are upon the ark of the testimony. All that I will tell you for the children of Israel. That's part of the encouragement for what we've been working with. But let me unwrap that just a bit. The speaker in these verses is obviously God. The person he's speaking with is Moses. Now, if we're looking at these verses, then, that's fairly straightforward. For a clue as to the purpose of the cherubim, quick aside. Did you notice when we responded with the third paragraph of the Amidah, Kadosh, 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 who was assembled there? The same kind of beings. In case you missed it, I've now informed you. Next time, don't miss it. So we join those crowds, and then we'll rejoin our story. All right. Where was I? The purpose. Now, we can understand that the words of God to Moses come from between them, especially those instructions that he's going to give to the entire nation, as the text says. In other words, the Torah emerges, in a sense, from between the two cherubim, as you picture it. Now, let's turn to perhaps a deeper understanding of that picture and perhaps the role of the cherubim. The sages of the Talmud, the rabbis of old, provided us with one detail that hints at the message that seeks to symbolize. They said that the faces of the cherubim looked like the faces of a young boy and girl. So says the Talmud. And so if we go back to the biblical description, then we have a young boy and girl standing across from each other while facing one another. The association conjured up by this image is none other than young love. And I won't sing the song, and I will spare you. In another place, the sages of the Talmud expressed this clearly, and I shared this text with you last week, but I remind you of it. Whenever Israel came up to the festival to Jerusalem, the curtain would be moved for them between the holy and the holy place and the Holy of Holies. And the cherubim were shown to them, whose bodies were intertwined with one another, embracing. And they would be thus addressed, the people who were coming and saw this. Look, you are beloved before God as the love between man and woman, end quote. And it sounds exactly, especially when you think in terms of it as young love, of what the prophet Jeremiah said in Jeremiah 2, verse 2. God said, as a young bride, you followed me through the wilderness. Young love. If this is so, then the cherubim represent God and the Jewish nation. And they look like a girl and a boy embracing, and they symbolize the love of God for his people. What we still need to understand then is, why does the Torah emerge from between the two cherubim? Well, the answer can be given on two levels. On the first level, sorry about all that crackling. On the first level, the Torah comes out of love. We must not then see the Torah's guidelines as a heavy burden, but rather as directions given to us out of love. Quick aside, for those of you who were in the class last night and who were listening, this is part of what we were talking about last night. For those of you who didn't go to the class or who weren't listening, that's a reason for going to class. Anyhow, back to what we talked about last night and what this text tells us as well. The directions of the Torah were given to us out of love. Even if there are guidelines that we might not understand, we can trust the God who gave them. And he did this out of infinite love, as symbolized then by the cherubim. On another level, we might say that when God and the Jewish nation are embracing, as this picture shows, a wonderful kind of Torah is formed, the Torah of life, a Torah which is both divine and humane, a Torah that expresses lofty ideas while getting down into the little details about human weaknesses, providing direction for any situation, for any place, for any time. As we seek to serve him willingly and give up the offerings voluntarily and give up ourselves wholeheartedly. It's our call. The rabbis put it this way. And this doesn't quite fly as well in our day and age. You're a son if you obey. You're a slave if you don't. You're a child of his if you obey. You're a slave if you don't. It's your choice. So make that choice in the next couple minutes of quiet in response to God. There's coming the time that Vayi been so anticipated, and in fact the Elenu reinforces as our anticipation, when all, in fact, will follow God and voluntarily serve Him. Elenu tells us in this way, as we rise and we face Jerusalem yet again, then the world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. We will all serve Him voluntarily, as we now affirm we do presently as well. Pages 102 to 107 is that affirmation. Join us, please, on those pages.
Aleinu l'shabeach v'adon hakol, v'atein keduvai l'shem bereshit, shelo asanu v'goya haraso, elo samanu v'mishachal ha'adama, shelo sam kalkeinu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kekal hamonam, ve'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malkei hamakim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim ve'yoser haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim ima'al u'schinanu zo ve'kavei meromim hu Eloheinu ein od emet malkeinu efes ulato kakatu b'torato vayagata hayom v'hashivota el levavecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim b'shamayim b'ma'al ve'al ha'aretz mitachat ein od. It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for He has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs, our calling is our task. We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like Him. For He stretched forth the heavens like a tent, and established the earth. Truly there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath there is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed, and all false gods shall be at an end. Then shall the world be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. May the kingdom of David's greater Son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled. The Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam vayed. V'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech ol kol haaretz. Vayom hahu yeh Adonai echad. Ushmo echad.
You may be seated, all but one of you.